Hi everybody, we're back again, and our last session of today, day 2. I'm delighted to have Dr. Mark Glynn here.
Got my name there,
I know you. Dr. Mark Glynn from DCU, a great friend of GMIT, Letterkenny IT and IT Sligo for many years, and now we're the AT, the Atlantic Technological University. So it's great to have you here with us, Mark, in person, and he's going to talk to us all about learning analytics. So looking forward to this. Thanks, Mark.
Thanks, Karina. A great friend, and some people will say a bad smell, keep turning up and can't get rid of. But thanks, Karina, for the invitation today, and indeed for Jess for organising everything. And I apologise again for my last-minute response to emails. I'm going to chat to you about your Moodle page, but a lot of what I'm going to chat to you about today would equally apply on Blackboard. What tends to happen is the buttons will be in different places within the page, but the concepts are exactly the same. My name there, as says Mark Glynn, email is firstname.lastname at dcu.ie, so mark.glynn@dcu.ie, or indeed anybody that's on Twitter, it's @GlynnMark is the email. If you do email me, I apologise in advance. I get about 200 emails a day, so you won't get an immediate response, but I will get back to you, I promise. So, a little bit about myself. I've had a long history now of collaborating with Karina, and had the pleasure of coming down and teaching on one of the TEL courses at one stage, one of the Lynn modules, if I remember rightly, and it spawned off from there. I started that in my IOTI days, Institutes of Technology of Ireland, which is now called THEA. I was there for about 5 years, and before that I was a chemistry lecturer in your shoes now, teaching the chemistry modules. But of course I couldn't tell you what colour a white lab coat is, it's been so long at this stage. And then previous to that, what seems like a lifetime ago, I did public affairs for the pharmaceutical sector. So that's me in a nutshell. And I promise I will finish on time, or at least, if not even, try to get a little early. What we're going to do, I will make all of these slides available afterwards, or Jess, you have the link anyway, so it can be sent out to whoever. I want to talk about evaluating your courses, your course page. And again, this applies to Blackboard and also to Moodle. There are many different ways you can evaluate it. You can have a series of checklists, you can do focus groups with your students, or indeed industry stakeholders. You can do surveys, again, industry or students, and you can do analytics. I'm not saying one is better than the other. I'm not saying you should do them in a particular order. Do them all, as far as I'm concerned. But I'm going to concentrate today on the checklist and the analytics, because it is how you design your Moodle page makes this important. And what I want to show you is how to design your Moodle page to optimize it for evaluation, to optimize it for learning analytics. Okay? So just going through some checklists. And I appreciate you're not going to be able to see the content on the screen because it's quite small text, but in the notes of each one of these slides is a link to the full document. So you'll have that cut, paste, plagiarize, harvest, whatever term you like, use that and use it for ATU if it's of use to you. But what we've done in a DCU checklist that we have is we've broken it down into particular domains, and then we ask a lecturer, this is a self-assessment, we ask a lecturer to ask these particular questions. So my eyesight is a little bit worse than I'd like. How strong is the course narrative? So what are your narrative? Do you have an introduction? Do you introduce who you are? Do you introduce what the course is about? And it asks you a whole series of questions. So your first analytics that you're going to look at is the design of your course, and that's what I'd encourage you to do, is to give yourself a self-evaluation, don't have to share it with anybody else, on what you would consider yourself in each one of those questions, and then set yourself targets for improving your rating the year after and the year after and so on. And it's an iterative approach. You are not going to give yourself an excellent response for every single thing. We always have room for improvement. But that's the first thing. So I'll give you a checklist on designing online courses. What I will say is our local name for Moodle is Loop. So wherever you see Loop, don't be distracted by that. It is just replace it with Moodle. But again, the same principle applies for Blackboard or any other VLE that you decide to use. And I know some staff even use Teams as their VLE. Same thing applies. The other one is UDL, and this is a phrase, our UDL checklist. This is a phrase that has came up time and time again, UDL being universal design for learning. And what we've done with this particular checklist, and kudos to my team within DCU, Suzanne Stone in particular, put in an awful lot of time in taking each one of the checkpoints within the UDL framework, each one of the checkpoints, and saying, right, well, if you're a new lecturer, so emerging, or if you're, I've been around the block a few times, I won't say old, right, around the block a few times to say if you're a proficient lecturer, and this is proficient in the use of Moodle, these are different tasks that you can do, different activities that you can use. And again, an expert, again, these are more activities that you can use. And what we go through, and to remind you, where I say loop, you say Moodle, but in the expert column there, we say, well, you could do to optimize individual choice and activity, which is really good for UDL. It's also good for academic integrity. The first example we give, we say offer students choice in the type of assessment, and the last presentation was a real good example of that. Do we get them to do a song, a dance, a reflection, whatever the case may be, but offering them that choice. And the next one then, we say give them the choice activities, but also to collect ideas from students. And that would be a great example of your last course, where you would say, give me local examples of this SDG, where you're enlisting the examples from students. But again, I'm coming back to the analytics. Each one of these will allow you to determine how many emerging techniques have I used, how many proficient techniques, and set yourself targets. Again, I can't emphasize enough, this is a self-assessment approach I would encourage you to do to allow you to reflect on the design of your courses. And the last checklist, I did say I'd lash through these, the last checklist is to do with academic integrity. So starting off, and the reason why I wanted to include this in, because I knew Philip was talking first thing in the morning around assessment design and around academic integrity. We have came up with after doing a literature review, came up with a set of 12 principles of how you can design your assessment to improve academic integrity. So the analytics I want you to do, the analysis, the reflection I want you to do on your course is look through those 12 principles and see how many you can apply to your course. Self-assessment, so you're only going to be reflecting with yourself. There's no point in giving false answers. But can you say within your assessment design that you encourage student ownership? Can you, within your design, say that you're involving or giving clarity and transparency to your assessment? So all the time asking these and setting targets for yourself. How am I going to improve it later on? So all of this, all related to your Moodle course, all allowing you to analyse and reflect on your Moodle design. But this is the juice of the conversation. That's the very brief introduction there. But the juice of it comes down to analytics and what you have at your data. And I was here, was it here the last time? I can't remember which particular venue it was. And I sang a song which was out, instead of every breath you take, it was every click you take. I'll be watching you, right? That's what Moodle does. Moodle monitors every single click you take, and you can look at it. And I sang another song somewhere else. I'm not going to subject it to you here because it's been recorded, but about asking staff to look at the logs that you have on Moodle and see what's alarming. When do alarm bells need to go off, where you need to start going up and tapping students on the shoulder, see what's going wrong? Or sometimes it could be alarming, saying students aren't understanding my material, so I need to revise it, and so on. And if you come away with anything from this session, I want you to come away with a top phrase. And the top phrase is measure what you value, right? Don't value what you measure. Okay? It's very, very easy to come up with stuff to measure, but if you value student engagement, don't measure student attendance. That's not engagement. You can turn up sitting, you're be watching Facebook or looking at Twitter or Instagram at the back of the class. Oh, but you're there. Oh, great. I tick a box. It's how they engage with your content, how they engage with your courses. And if you value engagement, well, measure engagement. Okay? And it's too easy to measure stuff and then value it afterwards. right? You want to look at what you value first and then try and measure that. And I've put up this particular picture for those that can't see the screen. There's the big picture, which has all of the data from across the entire university, but individual lectures on their Moodle page are only looking at a small part of the entire student journey. And that's what I want to share with you today. So under your reports, and I'll be doing a sort of a live demonstration, for want of a better expression, in a few minutes. I've taken a screenshot here of our Moodle page, but there are some additional reports we have in that you wouldn't. But as I say, the live demonstration will cover that off. But there's two in particular I want to bring your attention to. One is the logs, right? And the second one then is activity completion. And I'm going to show you how to take advantage of those now in a second. But there are so many other different reports, and if you have the time, flick through them, take a particular course, look at the logs for a day and see what sense you can make out of them. And if you do run into problems saying what's the difference between this report and that report, give Kevin a shout, give Sean a shout, or indeed give myself a shout, and we'll see if we can help you out on it. But one particular report, just to draw to your attention, that we have on our own site, and I must double check do you have it on yours, is a mobile app usage report. So we look to see, are they looking at your content, and if they are they looking at it on a computer, or are they looking at it on a mobile phone? And the reason why that is important is because when you're designing content, you need to design for mobile first, because what works on a mobile will work on a desktop or a laptop, but what works on a desktop or laptop doesn't necessarily transpose the other way around and will work on a mobile. So that's a report that we put in, an additional report for our staff. I'm just going to take the top report here, which allows us to look at the course logs. And there's a series of drop-down menus. So this is the title of the course. In my case, it was called the Gradebook course. You can look at the number of participants, all of the participants on the course, all days or one particular day, all activities, or indeed one particular activity, and indeed all actions, so whether they updated it or whether they just viewed and so on and so forth, right? This gives you a tremendous insight as to what your students are looking at and how much they're looking at it. And sometimes they won't look at it all. Other times they're looking at it 10 and 11 times. And you need to figure out, well, why aren't they going back to it 10 or 11 times? Does that mean they don't understand it? Does that mean I need to redesign it a little bit more? So a higher number of activities, a higher number of visits doesn't necessarily mean it's a superb result. But again, I'll show you how to drill down into that in a second. All right. Course participation is another one, and again the columns that you have, the drop down menus that you have, you can filter it based on groups of students or indeed the entire class or individual students. Here you'll see Jess student, Kira student, Robert student. They're obviously just student names that I've made up. But what else do we have? We have, you can show all students or staff, engaging teachers, as well as non-editing teachers and so on. But completion activity is the next one, and that to me is the most valuable report. Just to explain what I have here on this screen here, I have a URL for them to go visit. I have a choice activity for them to do, and then I have two what are called Moodle pages, for those of you that would be familiar with it. And all that is a page with piece of text on it. But what happens is, when they do the self-analysis, when they finish the self-analysis, or using Moodle terminology, when they've completed the self-analysis, then this is available. So you'll see in blue text, or I hope you can see in blue text, there the blue button says restricted, and it says this content is not available until the self-analysis is marked complete. Okay, and indeed the second Moodle page here, the Moodle content, is restricted until the first steps is complete. Okay, so what marks it as being complete? How does Moodle mark it as being complete? Do you mark it as being complete? Or indeed does a student mark it as complete? The answer is it depends. And it's your choice to actually do that, but the logs can tell you a tremendous amount when you set it up, when you design your course, to have activity completion activated. And I'm not sure if you can see there, but on the extreme right, there's a box beside each one of those. And when your box is in a dotted line, that means the computer, i.e. Moodle, is going to automatically manage that, or indeed the lecturer is going to automatically manage that. The student can't tick the box. The student can only tick the box when there's a continued line around it, when it's not a dotted line. So very quickly, you can look, and indeed your students can look and see, what can I tick off as being marked, and what can my lecturer, or what does Moodle tick off? And when I'm explaining this, I always use the terms and conditions, the Ryanair terms and conditions box that's on their website. You know, you can't book your flight until you've ticked the box to say, I complete. You could say, I can't get to inner thought until they tick the box for self-analysis. Does that make sense? They see it, but they can't click on it. You can also set it, it's possible where it's completely hidden, right? Where it's totally invisible. A student comes on and all they see is these first two things, right? So that's not available, or not visible, and there's not available and not visible. The challenge that you have with that is Karina will come into the course as a student and will see first steps in self-analysis, and Karina being Karina, she'll be a very diligent student and complete the self-analysis, and the third object, inner thought, will come up. And then Kevin logs on to the course, not exactly a diligent student, clicks on, he only sees two things. Now, he doesn't read the instructions, right? But he sees the two things and says, I have something different, something wrong with my course. I'm going to contact Mark to figure out why my course is different to the others. So for me, I would have those instructions visible to students, that this is there, but you can't click on it. It's not visible. And again, I'll show you how to do that. It's all in your design of your course. So the next obvious question to me is, well then, how do I actually activate this activity completion? And here is a particular assignment, right? And there's different ways you can mark an activity complete. So here it says the activity is complete when the student views the activity, right? Or a student gets a grade for an activity, or a student submits something for an activity. So again, from a practical perspective, they'd upload their lab report. That's complete. Happy days. They're not waiting on me to grade it, so I just want to tick that box. But if you are saying that they can't go on to the next assignment until I've graded it, whatever the case may be, you just tick the other box. Or maybe it's as simple as they have read a statement, or they have said that you want them to be able to see the assignment, so you can just tick the box, they must view the activity. The power is in your hands as to how detailed and how granular you want to be. But again, it designs the page in such a way that allows you to take advantage of analytics, because you can run a report by pressing a button, which we'll do now in a second. Press a button and it will pull up all your students and who's completed that task and who hasn't. It's very, very clear, very easy to see both for the student and for you. And indeed, you have the facility within Moodle to send a message to those students that haven't completed the activity. So really, really powerful. And the last thing, just to explain to you here, is it enables you to add a date to it. So the deadline for the assignment might be like the 21st of February, but you want them to at least have looked at it by a particular time, or you want them to have uploaded or received a grade by a particular time, and you can control that date that you end up putting. It doesn't necessarily have to be the deadline date. Forums on Moodle, discussion forums, give you that little bit more flexibility with activity completions. Same thing, you will see the box ticked beside it. Is it complete? Is it not? Same functionality. They can't go on to the next activity until the forum is complete. But as you will see here, you have different options. Some forums, as you know, you can do grades associated with them, but others you can ask them to upload a post or indeed reply to another post. So it's a really good one for icebreakers as students. post a question, ask them to reply to it, introduce themselves, say what they're struggling with, or maybe they have to start a discussion forum themselves, and you have the option there to tick whichever box is most appropriate. But you also have the option to specify a number associated with each one of those. So you must create a post, but reply to 3 others, or reply to 2 others, or whatever you decide. Again, you are in control of that. And again, you can set a completion date. And what you're doing is you're not measuring, have they read the post? You're measuring, have they engaged with the discussion forum? Because that's what's important. Not have they clicked on the link and found it. You're measuring what you value, and that's the engagement. Quiz, again, something similar, a couple of different boxes to go in there. Have they viewed it? The obvious one to do it. Have they graded it? So that would mean they'd have to have completed the quiz to go with it. But the other one that they've added in here, which they are now thankfully in Moodle 4, which is actually just released. I'm not sure, are you upgrading this summer, or are you waiting till next summer?
I think that's a bit undecided at the minute.
Undecided, right, okay. So if you are in the next upgrade that you have, whether it's this summer or next summer, you will have this passing grade, because maybe you set an activity for them to do, and if they get a grade, it's marked complete, but actually it's not really complete if they failed it. If they got 0%, you know, there's no point in saying they can move on. They must go somewhere else. So you can insert, it already exists for quiz.
We have that already.
Yeah, for quiz it already exists, but in the newer versions of Moodle, it's in every different assignment activity, right? So every different grading activity that's there. So it's a super facility to go with it. And again, you can talk on digital badges. You can set it's complete when they score a grade in their quiz, and then you award them a badge. Does that make sense? And what you could do, just extending that and going to your own example, you could have 3 or 4 activities that must be complete before they get the badge. And you have a choice now as a lecturer. You can analyse how many of those 3 or 4 activities have they completed, or you could just analyse how many of them have got a badge. So again, it works and is incredibly useful for you in that respect. This is an example of the activity completion report. And as you will see here, the student names are down here on the left, and then you'll have to turn your head sideways to see what it is. But that's a list of all of the activities that I have chosen on my course that I'm going to monitor for activity completions. And just to reiterate, I could have 20 activities on my course, but I only want to look at 3 or 4 of them. Well, then that's what I set here. Okay? There's no point in me setting the activity completions for all 20, and then I have this mammoth report. I can, if I want. That's not a problem. But the other thing that's important about this particular report is when you call it up, you can look and you can see here, for example, John Smith has done really well. He's done the 5 or 6 activities. You'll see the tick boxes in there. But Jess hasn't done anything. You may have met Jess in the corridor and actually made sure, yeah, I know what she's doing there and I know what she's doing here. So you as a lecturer can mark her complete. You can override the system, for want of a better expression. Or you'll get a very quick facility to just say, Jess, send message. You need to get your act together. You use different language than that. But yeah, you need to start completing activity X, Y, and Z. Okay? So there are a couple of options that's open for you in your designing it, and this is an example of what's called conditional access, linked to it, or strict access. You can do activity A. When you've done activity A, activity B becomes visible. When you've done activity B, activity C becomes visible, and when you've done activity C, you get your badge, you get your award, you get whatever it is that you want. Okay, so that's the sort of concept as to how you could design your course, but also then take full advantage of the analytics. And it's under conditional access. It's called restricted access is what it's about. And you can restrict it by using each one of those filters that's there. Restricted based on a date, or restricted based on a grade that I spoke about earlier on. Or maybe it's a restrict access based on a group that your students are involved in, right? So the other one that I want to come into is talking about the quiz. So somebody was doing quizzes earlier on. Was it yourself doing the quizzes? The statistics behind the quiz are just amazing. Absolutely brilliant. There's just a ton of VLE tools, a ton of quizzing tools available. But if you design your quiz right, the statistics available in Moodle are just, they're brilliant. They will beat everything hands down. And to see this data, after you've designed your quiz, to see this data, you would come into the administration of the quiz, come down to results, and statistics are what's there. And I want to give you some examples as to how we looked, with our lectures, how we looked at the data behind the quiz. Again, very blurry. I don't expect you to be able to read this, but yes, you can circulate the slides and so on. But you can do this in your own course to look at your own quizzes. It gives you a general overview of the quiz information, and I will qualify this by saying I'm not a statistician. It's been a long time since I've done maths, let me tell you. So I look at this and I focus in on particular areas of this. And what I look at, and hopefully it's in the next slide, I get it to break down each one of my questions and look at the statistics of my questions, again, to help me with the course design, to help me with my assessment design. And just to explain here what this is, what you're seeing here is question 1 in my quiz, and I had question 1 was randomly made up of questions from a particular category. So here's question 1.1, which is this question, which is on dressing pack. Question 2, which is on aseptic technique. So they're taken by different students because Moodle randomly distributed them to the students. But what you will see across the columns there, the first column that you'll see is number of attempts. So 221 students completed question 1 in total. But that broke down into 28 students doing question 1.1, 33 students doing 1.2, and indeed 45 students doing 1.3. Does that make sense? Okay, so the next bits that I want you to look at then, the next column is facility index. And that tells you how easy your question is. And it gives you a percentage score, and you don't need to be a statistician to understand this, but what you're looking at is the higher the number, the easier the question, all right? So you don't want 100% being your facility score, because that means all your students just got it right. That's like saying to them, what colour is the door? Is it brown or is it white or is it what? And it's obvious what the colour is, so everybody chooses it. You are wasting your time and you are wasting your students' time in asking them a question that is so bloody obvious. It's not telling you a difference. Did they meet the learning outcome for it? So aim for a facility index in the mid-50s, right? Obviously, if I was to put a range on it, I'd go sorry?
30
Sorry, say again?
0.3 to 0.7.
0.3 to 0.7. I was actually going to say 35% to 75%, but that's even better again, right? So I'm not a statistician, right? But, oh, you are. Great, great. Preaching to the converted then, right? But look at the facility index and try modify your question to become between the 30% and the 70%. And again, the discrimination index, which is on the far side, is, does it discriminate between your A student and your C student? And again, your percentage figures, I'm going to bow to the person at the back of the class now, tell me what that should be. Okay, I don't feel so bad. No, that's great.
That is actually very important, the discrimination index.
If it's lower than 10%, your question's invalid, and you want it to be higher is better.
Higher is better, but not too high, I think.
Well, no, too high is great, because it means that the good students are getting this one right at the same rate they're getting all the others right.
All the others right.
Right, but it works both ways. It's that if good students are getting that wrong, there may be something wrong with the question.
Exactly.
Or if poor students are getting it right. Again, it shows whether it fits into the pattern with all the other questions you have.
Exactly. And the thing about this is each one of those scores is going to give you a little bit of information. So when you combine that information together is where it becomes valuable. And again, looking at how you design your course, you may have a multiple choice. These are multiple choice questions here. Look at the individual question. And for example, this particular one on aseptic technique, did I take a screenshot? No, I didn't. This particular one on aseptic technique, maybe 20% of the students, maybe 50% of the students got it wrong, but 49 of those 50 actually chose option B. It's not that it was randomly distributed across all the options in it. If the correct answer is A, well, if the other half that got it wrong all chose the same wrong answer, that's kind of telling you something there. Is there a misunderstanding amongst the class as to why they're choosing B and so on? So maybe I need to go back to my teaching, or maybe it's the way I phrased the question that it misled your students. So drilling into this analytics can tell you so much more within it. I have put up the definition so I will root out those figures, and thank you very much for that, 30 to 70%. I will root out, I promise, the discrimination index figures as to what it should be, but definitely, as Sean says, the higher it is, the better in that respect. You don't need to be a statistician to understand that basic framework that I need to either modify my questions or my questions are bang on. Right? And the good thing about this, the new upgrade in Moodle, is it addresses the problem you mentioned with yours in your session earlier on about sharing questions across categories or across courses, but also analysing the statistics of the question. You may have the same question in Chemistry 101 and then, I don't know, Science 101, different modules that you're teaching. Now you're able to actually analyse the same question, and you can say, I'm just analysing it in my chemistry course, or I'm analysing it in both courses together, and to allow you again to reflect on your question and the quality of your question. But you're designing it here to, here's the score, I knew I had it in there somewhere. Designing your course in such a way, and in this case designing it through putting in quiz questions, formative quiz questions as it was in this case, to see, are they working, is it learning? And what in this particular example is from nursing, right? So just to explain what's on the screen, I appreciate it's a whole load of numbers which shouldn't have thrown up all at once, but I have the first attempt at the quiz and the last attempt at the quiz, because the lecture allowed them to do it several times. They weren't concerned how long it took them. They just wanted to know, because the learning outcome is, by the end of this module, will you know? I don't care if it took them 10 times. In this particular case, it was to do with drug calculations for nurses when they're doing it. So they don't care how long it takes them to understand the maths. They just want to know that when they go out on the wards, they understand the maths. So they allowed the students to do these quizzes as many times as possible. But what we did was we looked at the facility index the very first time, and then at the very last time they did the quiz, and we were able to say the more they do the quiz, the more they're learning. They're actually improving. There's a 20%, nearly 21% change in question one, and indeed you can carry on down the entire way through. On the right-hand side, there's an explanation that I couldn't actually remember earlier on, which interprets the F index. So if you are scoring something that's between 6 and 10, it's very difficult. But equally, if you're scoring something between 95 and 100, it's extremely easy. You want that balance. So there we go, 35 to 64. That's what you're looking for a particular score. In this particular one, again, how we analysed it, we were able to show, and this is what I would encourage you to do, we were able to show that students that attempted the quiz, the formative exercises, right, when they actually analysed them, so of the 215 in the students, 71 never attempted the formative exercise quizzes. But what was their score, right, when they did the summative quiz at the end? So they were given the choice to do these all throughout the semester, and then at the practice quizzes, but then at the end they were given a summative quiz. And we were able to determine that students that attempted a formative quiz scored considerably higher than students that didn't. So the first thing that lecturer said to the next cohort of students, do the quizzes, have the facts and figures to show. So I was able to use this analytics to show the lecturer, one, it was worth using formative quizzes in our thing. There's an actual benefit for the students. And then she was able to show her students, listen, my stuff is great, you need to do it, you need to engage with it. And showing them the facts and figures work. You're going to score on average 8% more, 10% more, or 15% more. And again, we did this with several different quizzes and looked at the impact of students, the value of students doing the formative questions. I'll skip through that in the interest of time, but I want to come into this one here. Now, I know you have the same analytics in Stream as you do on YouTube, and some of you use Stream and some of you use YouTube. But what people don't look at is the video analytics, to look to see how much of my video are they watching, right? And indeed, how much are they looking at it and then have to rewind it and go again. So when you have a video, don't upload it to your Moodle course. Bar anything else, what will happen is students have to download it to view it, and also you're not getting any of the stats on it, or you're just getting a stat saying, did they view it? Did they click on it, really? Not did they view it? Whereas if you put it up on stream, or if you put it up on YouTube, and you can hide it on YouTube in such a way, and the same in stream, where it's only visible to those students, you can look at the analytics behind it to see how much of it did they watch. So you're going to have to excuse my eyesight. I'm going to squeeze a little bit. On this particular one, the majority of the students ended up coming off my video, here we go, after 37 seconds, I think. Now, it's a constant, pretty constant look after that, but I lost most of them after 37 seconds. Here you'll see it's peaked up and then went down. So what that actually meant was they were rewinding the video and looking at that again. Does that make sense? So then I looked at my video and I said, right, why were they rewinding it at that particular point? How can I redesign my video, use the analytics to redesign my video to make it clear that they don't have to rewind it? How can I stop them logging off at 30 seconds, right? Or maybe all I need is a 30-second video. Maybe they got it after 30 seconds. Okay, so again, embedding a video into your Moodle page gives you better analytics than uploading the content in there, uploading the video. Also, you're not making your Moodle course as big as from a size perspective to go with it. The little stuff that I've suggested is easy to implement, absolutely easy to implement, and you can have fabulous insights as to how your students are using your material. But the one thing I will say is please, 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 when you look at your material, when you look at your stats, don't be too upset by what you see, because what you might see is, I spent bloody hours on that video and nobody's looked at it, or only 2 people have looked at it, or so on. But that's just a reflection. Maybe I need to approach it another way, or maybe they got it in the class, right? So what I want to do, just in the time that's left, is just to show you where those reports are on your page. So bear with me one second.
Questions here as well.
Yep.
Mark, see that one from Ken, Jessica. Will I call it out, or?
Yeah.
Ken McCarthy is asking, is there a danger with small class sizes in the TU sector that the sample sizes for this statistical analysis makes it hard to draw conclusions from?
Good question, and the answer is yes and no. In terms of, depends on the conclusions that you want to draw from it, but very simply, if you're looking at how long students are watching your video for, well, if it's a small class, you're only concerned about the small numbers anyway. But if it's only 1 or 2 students, you can't make an analysis on that. If you've 100 students and only 1 or 2, like, this is what I always say about the end of module surveys. The people that fill them in, that make sure they fill them in, they're the people that have an issue and they want to tell you what it is. But that's not maybe necessarily representative of the class. So when you get one response to your end of module survey and it's horrible response, that's not a reflective of your module if you've 100 people in your class. It doesn't stop you that burrowing away at your head and getting you really upset about it. But it does depend on numbers. But on this sort of material, smaller numbers are okay. That's as a general rule.
Aoife, you've a commentary in there. Did you want to say, or?
Well, no, I was just answering.
You were answering when you was. Yeah.
Definitely bow to the statistician. Good.
This was more about the statistics around quizzes. That was as opposed to the YouTube. And I suppose the same applies.
The same applies, absolutely does. Drawing a conclusion from 5 students doing a particular question is difficult. But I go back to that example where if all of the students, or a large portion of the students, chose the wrong answer, but they all chose the same wrong answer, well, then that's a problem.
Yes.
Right, regardless of how small your number is, but if they're all choosing the wrong answer.
It's also really good for rooting out bum questions.
Yeah.
Finding the ones that you think
Yes.
weren't fine, they're not working, and really filtering requests.
Yeah.
Because if they're all getting it wrong with students, and you look closer at the question, I guarantee you usually you'll find a problem with it.
You find a problem with it, yeah. And equally, what it allows you to do is to look and say, actually, they're all getting this. So I don't need to go back because you think either based on last year's experience or based on your own experience of going through the module, yeah, I struggled really hard for this. I'm going to spend like a full 2 hours on this or 3 hours. And then you look at the quiz results and they've all got it. Which obviously means you're a brilliant lecturer, right? But just to show you, and I'll come back to the questions now in a second as to where it is. The reports here now, and it's different. There we go. So reports on your administration block, you're in here. Your reports block that's there, and then you have your logs. Your live logs are like within the last hour or thereabouts, and your activity completion is here. Okay, and you can get your statistics, which can give you some nice activities logs there, and tell you when your students are logging in, what they're logging in, what the views are, and so on, where your peaks are from it, and it goes down through each of the times and breaks them down and so on. So that sort of stuff, it's nice to play about with, right? But again, don't get hung up on the results if you see nobody's looking at your content. You just take the positives and try to come back and twist it a little bit more. Yes, sir.
Mark, thanks. It's really interesting. I have a question. Did you just say that if we just put a video up on Moodle, that the activity completion, when you activate it, it only activates if they click it or not? Is that what you just said?
It depends on how you upload it, right? And so there's different ways to upload it. You can upload it within a label or within a page, or you can upload it as a file. So I don't know your course settings, your default course settings.
You could also technically do it as a H5P, so,
Yes.
and then add interactions, so therefore it could be a bit more.
Yeah.
If you want them to watch it and maybe know a particular thing, you add, let's say, a question or so on.
You can set activity completion to say if the students click on this, like,
Yeah.
view it.
That's what I think I'm doing.
Yeah.
So if they're all just clicking and then not looking at it.
Then not looking at it. Yeah, exactly.
How can I, did you say that there's no settings?
So
Or I have to change it?
again, it depends on how you upload the video, but a H5P is a great suggestion. So a H5P is a particular activity type in Moodle, and there's one of the options. So when you open up H5P, it gives you a range of options to do, and one of which is called interactive video. And what you can do there, upload it, and then maybe just put a question at the very end. And the question, when it gets to that, you'll know if they've answered the question, they've got to the end of the video.
You can
By the way, I ran this analysis on our induction course. That was about 800 students during COVID who did it. It was more. And when I did a H5P, 3 to 4 times the amount of students went in and did it, that if the thing wasn't interactive.
Yeah.
And that was even if it wasn't compulsory to win the laptop. So making it interactive made 3 to 4 times more students watch it than promising that if they finished it, they'd win a laptop.
Yeah.
And other resources, including videos.
We found exactly the same with our orientation, and we ended up getting, I can't remember the exact figures, but in the region, I'm going to give or take a couple of percent. Of our 4,000 students, 75% of our students engaged with orientation to a high level. Because what we did was we awarded points for everything throughout orientation that they got, like club card points on your Tesco card, but we did this within Moodle. So everything they clicked on, we gave them points, and depending on how big the activity was that they had to complete, how much time it was involved, we gave them more points. But when they scored above a certain amount of points, we said they were highly engaged, and 75% of our students ended up being highly engaged with our orientation process, our orientation courses. And when we're face-to-face, we don't get 75% attendance, never mind engagement at the different things. So we knew the way we designed it, exactly the way you were talking about, the students engaged, they just do. It's brilliant. And it's a whole thing of gamification, which can help build students. That's another seminar for another day.
Okay.
Okay.
There's no other comments there online. Thanks a million, Mark.
No bother.
Thank you. And it's great to show the Academic Integrity Hub again, just reminding people that it's there. So thanks very much, everybody. We're going to sign off now, and we'll see you all in the morning for day 3 and the finale of Digital Ed. So thanks to all our speakers today, and all our presentations, or all the presentations and all the team that's supporting it here in-house, the broadcasting of the conference. So see you all tomorrow. Thanks very much.